In the 13th century, a shadow fell across the world. From the plains of Hungary to the shores of the Pacific, the Mongol Empire devoured everything in its path. Cities burned, armies shattered, and kingdoms vanished. Led by the heirs of Genghis Khan, their cavalry was the fastest, their tactics the most brutal, and their ambition limitless. No one had ever stopped them. But as their gaze turned south, toward the fertile lands of Southeast Asia, they found something unexpected. A small but defiant kingdom known as Viet. This is the story of how that kingdom, led by one of the greatest military minds in history, did the impossible. This is the story of the general who broke an empire. His name was Trần Quốc Tuấn. Born into the ruling Tern dynasty, he was a prince, a scholar, and a born commander. At a time when royal families were often torn apart by jealousy and ambition, he faced a choice. His own family had a claim to the throne, but he saw a greater threat on the horizon. He chose loyalty. He chose unity. He chose to serve his nation, knowing that a storm was coming that could destroy them all. He prepared his army not just with weapons and tactics, but with words. He wrote the famous Tangas, a proclamation to the officers. It wasn't just a military manual, it was a fiery call to arms, a reminder of their duty, and a promise of shared sacrifice. It forged a bond between soldier and general, unifying the entire nation for war it could not afford to lose. In 1258, the first wave of the Mongol horde crashed into Viet. They came with overwhelming numbers, expecting a swift and easy conquest, just like all the others. The Vietnamese capital, Thang Long Madande, Hanoi, was captured. To the Mongols, it seemed like victory, but Trần Quốc Tuấn and the Vietnamese leadership were playing a different game. They employed a strategy of emptying the garden, abandoning the capital to deny the enemy supplies and glory. As the overconfident Mongol army stretched its lines thin, the Vietnamese struck back. Battle of Ngbu, a decisive counterattack, routed the invaders. Stunned and starving, the Mongols were forced into a humiliating retreat. The first test had been passed. Viet had shown the world that the unstoppable empire could bleed. But the Mongols did not forget. In 1285, Tay returned. This time, it wasn't just a punitive expedition. It was a force of annihilation, led by one of Kublai Khan's own sons. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers poured across the border. Facing this overwhelming power, Trần Quốc Tuấn doubled down on his strategy. Scorched earth, the Vietnamese people burned their own villages, destroyed their own crops, and vanished into the mountains and jungles. Every granary was empty, every road a potential ambush. For the Mongol army, the land became a green desert. There was no food, no shelter, and no rest. Every step forward was paid for in blood and hunger. The invasion was already beginning to stall, not by a single pitched battle, but by 1,000 small cuts. With the massive Mongol army starving and bogged down, Trần Quốc Tuấn chose his moment to strike. The invaders relied on their vast naval fleet to control the rivers and bring in supplies. So, he went after the navy. At HMT, Vietnamese forces, including pardoned rebels who joined the cause, launched a surprise assault that crippled a key part of the Mongol fleet. Soon after, at Trung Di Duong, they attacked the enemy's main riverside supply base, capturing vital provisions and throwing the Mongol command into chaos. These weren't just skirmishes. They were strategic masterpieces that severed the enemy's lifeline. The tide was turning. For the first time, the massive Mongol war machine was not just stopped, it was being pushed back. The final blows of the second invasion were swift and devastating. At Tie Can Thi, Trần Quốc Tuấn forces ambushed and defeated a key Mongol general. Then, at Vạn Kiếp, the main body of the retreating Mongol army was crushed in a series of relentless attacks. Weakened by hunger, ravaged by disease, and demoralized by constant guerrilla warfare, the once invincible army collapsed. The second invasion was over, ending in a catastrophic defeat for the Mongols. But Kublai Khan was a proud emperor. He would not accept this humiliation. A third invasion was inevitable. In 1287, the Mongols came again, determined to finally crush Vietnamese resistance. This time, their strategy was built on logistics. A massive supply fleet sailed down the coast, carrying the food and equipment the land army would need to survive. Trần Quốc Tuấn knew this fleet was the enemy's heart. He dispatched his best naval commander to intercept it. At Van Hun, Vietnamese ships, smaller and more agile, lured the massive Mongol war junks into a network of islands and hidden channels. In a brilliant ambush, the entire supply fleet was captured or destroyed. The Mongol land army, waiting for supplies that would never arrive, began to starve before the final battle had even been fought. Their invasion was collapsing from within. The end came at the besieged Giang River in 1288, the site of a famous Vietnamese victory centuries earlier. Trần Quốc Tuấn planned to use history as a weapon. As the desperate and starving Mongol army fled toward the sea, their fleet entered the mouth of the river. But a trap had been laid. Miles of sharpened iron-tipped wooden stakes had been driven into the riverbed, hidden beneath the high tide. As the Mongol ships sailed over them, Vietnamese forces provoked a brief fight before feigning a retreat, drawing the entire enemy fleet further apart. Then, as the tide began to fall, the trap was sprung. The massive Mongol ships were impaled on the stakes, trapped and helpless. From both banks of the river, the Vietnamese forces attacked. The Battle of the Giang River was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The Mongol fleet was annihilated. Their dreams of conquering Viet died with it. They never returned. 3 invasions. 3 catastrophic defeats. Trần Quốc Tuấn and the people of Viet had done what no one thought possible. They proved that a united people, armed with brilliant strategy and unbreakable will, could defeat the greatest empire on earth. The general's legacy is more than just military victory. He is a symbol of national unity, resilience, and the idea that freedom is worth any sacrifice. His victories didn't just save his own nation. They sent a shockwave through history, proving that even the most powerful empires have their limits. They may conquer lands, but they cannot conquer a people who simply refuse to be broken. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories of the figures who shaped our world.